As substitute teachers, do we ever label the students we teach? Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Let's talk about it today. Episode 35.
Substitute Teachers Lounge.
All right, guys, I will have to say personally, it has been an absolutely monumental week, one of the greatest weeks of my life. And if you listened to last week's episode, you probably know what I'm talking about. This past Friday, when you're listening to this, it would be, I guess, 9 days ago. I had a grandson born to my son and his wife. They are doing great. They are at home. I mentioned to you last week that 3 weeks after that, I had another grandson due with my other son and his wife. Well, guess what? That ended up being only 3 days apart. So I got new grandsons 9 days ago, and I got new grandsons, another grandson 6 days ago. You can tell I'm excited. So everybody's home now. Both the sons are looking great. The mothers are looking great. Everybody's trending in the correct direction. So it was really exciting. And in fact, I will tell you that this past Monday, I had to cancel my substitute. I didn't have to cancel it. I chose to cancel it because of the birth of the second grandson. So I was excited for that. I'll tell you how that enters into a discussion, something else that happened this week as well. And then we had a couple other days this week. So I ended up that were in question. So I ended up only substituting 2 days out of the week. And I'll tell you why here in just a moment. Now, I do want to mention the school that I long-term sub for 6 weeks. I had been missing those kids. I will admit that. I had 3 days scheduled since then to be at that school. 2 of those days, one of the days was canceled because of flu. One of the days was canceled because of snow. And then this last week when my grandson was born, that was another day that I was due back to that school that I had to cancel. So I miss those kids, and this past Monday was the finals of their volleyball season, so I got to walk in there, and it's kind of funny. I'll have to admit I choked up a little bit when I saw them, and we exchanged hugs, and right there in front of their parents, it was really kind of exciting for me. Anytime you realize that you've at least touched those kids enough to see them respond to you and enjoy seeing you again and saying things like, I can't wait for you to sub for us again. I talked to some of the parents. It was very exciting to me to have them tell me that, when my child comes home and you've been their substitute, they've always had good things to say and they've always enjoyed the day. And I'm thankful for that. I'm also thankful that the teachers will tell me that that the kids have gotten their work done because, I don't want to just go in there and have a party and nobody get anything done. So I'm thankful for that side. But I saw them on Monday night. It was an exciting time. It's kind of funny. One of the girls that I taught in 8th grade last year, who's now a freshman in high school, was standing right by when all this reminiscing was going on with these players. And she said, Mr. Collins, what is all this? And then she walked up to those girls who she knew real well, and she said, now, Mr. Collins still thinks that I'm his favorite, don't you? And it was just kind of a joking atmosphere, and I was really excited to see her as well. I will be honest with you that one of the reasons she is one of my favorite students is I met her probably one of the first students I ever met. She has always been so nice to me, as most all the other kids have, but she kind of goes out of her way to talk to me, make me feel at home, help me with things that are going on, and just, volunteering to do stuff. So that particular girl does have a special place in my heart, and I'm glad I've met her and several of the other students that also have a special place in my heart because of the way they help me out and the friendliness they have shown me. Now, the flip side of that, even though I was very, very excited to see those students again and reminisce a little bit after about 2 weeks, I also got back into schools again this week. In fact, the 2 days that I subbed, it was for the same teacher. That's always a good sign. I actually picked up this substitute spot randomly on Tuesday, and then she called me or text me rather on Thursday to say, "Hey, Mr. Collins, we'd like to have you back. I've got to go to a conference Friday. Could you come back in and teach this same class?" And of course I said yes. So I got to be with those students 2 days. Most of them already knew me. I had taught them in other classes. Some of them were volleyball players. I always enjoy going to this school, as I do every school. I've been asked a lot which my favorite school is. And if I was forced, if somebody gave me $1 million to rank all my schools from top to bottom, I'd find a way to do it. But I'll be honest with you, every school that I've been to has got something in it that I like, and that I like more than the other schools. I would say that about every school. Every one of them has something I admire more so than the other schools, maybe something unique they're trying. This school, it's just one of the little special things that I think is so cool. When they give their morning announcements, they also announce the name of every substitute teacher that's in the building. And it's kind of funny. I'll have kids come up later in the day and say, "Mr. Collins, I knew you were here today. I was hoping you were going to be our substitute teacher." Or I'll hear them talk something really positive like that about another substitute. So that's just a small, neat way that principal has chosen to make everybody feel welcome at the school, and I really appreciate that. It's kind of funny this week. On Wednesday, when I couldn't accept a sub job, I had 3 different specific teachers text me the day before and wanted me to sub for them. Isn't that hilarious? The one day that I chose not to sub because of other things going on with my schedule, I had 3 teachers contact me. Then the next day, nobody contacted me. Now, I'll be honest, I turned down 3 jobs that I'm not even going to tell you why, because I think you would be a little ashamed of me. It's 3 of those jobs that I always think, well, I'm not sure my confidence level is high enough to take these jobs. I'm not even going to describe them to you. Now I'll describe one to you. Well, some of them were elementary school, and man, I really got to get over that. I've got to get into the elementary school situation eventually. I didn't do it. That was early enough in the process that I expected maybe something else to come along, and it didn't that I wanted. So I'll be honest with you, I was kicking myself all day that day. Feel free to kick me as well, because I think next time that happens, I'm going to go outside of my comfort zone and try to get some experience in that way. And I've told you, my very first experience with substitute teaching was after somebody told me, "Oh, don't teach in the public schools. You want to stay with private schools." It was after that. I went in with that same anxiety the first day, and it was absolutely fantastic. I don't know why I wouldn't think these situations would be the same. So 2 of the days I was off, actually 3 of the days that I was off teaching was for my own choice. Grandson, personal day, and then not exactly what I had hoped for. That I regret it later. So that's why I was off 3 days this week. I've also discovered something interesting this week. It was a school that I haven't shared a particular trivia question for. Now, I will admit I have an advantage in this area over a lot of you because I am an absolute music geek. I've got enough songs on my iPhone that you might hear me listen to Bing Crosby, followed by Creedence Clearwater Revival, and followed by Billie Eilish. And if you haven't checked those artists out, they are separated by about 80 years. So I try to keep up. I don't just try to do that so that I know the songs that the kids are listening to. Now, I will say this. the teacher allowed me this week, because of the type of projects they were working on, to play music in the background. I try to play their music. I found a couple of good channels on Sirius XM Radio. They also own Pandora. A lot of you are Pandora people, and I'm sure you would be interested in doing that. But I asked them a music trivia question. I asked them what the number one song of the last decade was, and this was sixth graders. Two of them got it. They enjoy things like that. If you're curious, last year's number one song was Old Town Road. Last decade's number one song from 2015 is Uptown Funk. I usually just take a small piece of chocolate to give to the winner. In fact, on Valentine's Day, I was trying to decide what to do without spending a whole lot of money. I knew this particular day I would be teaching 4 classes, and I just bought a $3 pack of Reese's Chocolate Hearts, and I chose a way to give out the candy randomly. It provided an incentive for them to behave all day, and then I just dropped my finger on a roster so that everybody had an equal chance. And somebody in that room won the candy that way, so I was thankful for that. One more thing I want to cover before we go on to our topic. I have again been approached by a company who wants to advertise on the podcast. It would be in the form of me reading an ad. You know that I've told you in the past that I don't want to do that unless I know it would be of a specific help to substitute teachers. I'm looking at that. I'm not going to do it right away, but I do listen to a lot of videos that my publisher Buzzsprout issues. And one of the most popular things right now, because it gives all the listeners out there a bunch of options, is Patreon. So I have set up a Patreon account. You can become members by just subscribing to the Patreon account. It costs you only what you want it to cost you in that regard. It's got an easy pay system set up. And here's the way it works. At one particular level, the benefit would probably be something like getting access to this episode, each week's episode, earlier than those that don't subscribe. Then another level it recommended is special episodes of a podcast to the next level. And then the final level would be benefits like having you, they call it AMA, which really just means Ask Me Anything. So I would have a session where you could send me questions, no matter what they are, and I would ask them. I would not reject any question that you should ask. But as I started talking about, setting up this account, I started thinking of ways to have fun with it. There's times when I'll be in a classroom and I'll see something that I think, man, that's really cool, or this gadget is really cool. And I'm thinking, if only I had a YouTube channel or something and I could record some video and share this with everybody out there, I would love to be able to do that. Well, this Patreon account will also allow me to do that. Maybe at the last level, I'll include videos, of course, not of the kids that are underage, but I would include videos of maybe the room setup or things that I liked or things that I thought were unique, and just share those videos at the top level. So basically, the podcast will continue to go on as is, unchanged, and you can download the episode every Sunday morning. I was excited. About 80% of the listens I get to this podcast is from some subscribers that know when a new episode comes out. I was excited about that because that's actually a pretty high percentage. The Buzzsprout video that I watched on this, I think theirs was actually 65%. So I'm very excited about having 80% of you that listen to this actually being subscribers to it, which means you kind of wait to see what's going to happen when the new one comes out. So thank you for that. And this Patreon account, at different levels, you'll have different perks. So you can choose not to at all. You can choose to try it out and then stop, or you can choose to support the podcast. And through that support, that will allow me to maybe buy additional equipment to try to keep up on some things and share some things with you that might be helpful, maybe some better on-site interview tools. I actually was shocked at how good some of the iPhone interviews that I did, like on the volleyball court and in the classroom, worked out fine. But, if I start doing this on an ongoing basis, then that's something that I would need to look into. So the Patreon account, I will put the link on the Facebook page for now, and then I'll share it online during the next week's podcast. So, and the reason I'm doing it that way is just because I don't have it completely finalized at the time I'm recording this, and I will, within the next 48 hours, so that it'll be convenient for me to share that link on the Facebook page, Substitute Teachers Lounge. As always, any feedback that you have, email to gregcollinssubstitute@gmail.com. I do hope to have an interview next week, but, I don't promise anything anymore because I know we all have such crazy schedules. So I will have the Patreon account set up soon, and I'll share with you how you can participate with that only if you want to. So that would be totally up to you. All right, so we're talking about, do we label the kids that we substitute teach for? Now, let's be honest about something. You know what I'm going to say, that we should never label the kids. So when we get to that part of the discussion, I'm going to have a tongue-in-cheek group of kids that I hope that you understand that I'm doing this as much to just kind of be funny about it without labeling one kid over another. Now, let's be honest. I guess it's the second time I've mentioned $1 million today. Somebody offered you $1 million if they walked in the class and it was a class that you had substitute taught several times and asked you, all right, rank the kids from top to bottom, and they were giving you $1 million, you could probably do it. We all have kids that tend to help us out, that tend to just get their work done, and that we all have kids that seem to be in the opposite direction sometime. I hope, and I know this, I know all you guys do this, you strive to treat everyone equally. And in fact, let's face it, the ones that really need our most attention was the latter group. Those are the ones that really need us to help them. Now, here's something that I am especially excited about. Every student that I've ever taught, whether the ones that I thought have struggled a little bit to the ones that I thought haven't struggled at all because it came so easy to them, all of those groups continue to walk up to me in the hallway and say, "Hi, Mr. Collins." They'll say something like, "We're glad you're here today." So all of those different groups do that. I can't think of any student that at least openly has seen me and gone the other way. I am happy that most of them feel comfortable about walking up to me. Now, I noticed in the school I was at this week, there was one little girl that I knew for a couple different reasons, and I can't remember if I had ever talked to her. So they were standing in the hallway. Their teacher was getting ready to take them to the library, I think it was. They were looking to the window to our room, and I kind of smiled at her, and she walked away because she thought maybe she wasn't supposed to be looking in the window. And I opened the door and walked out there, and she still kind of walked away. And then she finally smiled back, and I started talking to her, and she opened up and started talking to me. So a lot of times it's just giving the kids opportunities and making them feel welcome. And I'm thankful that all the students I feel like that I've run into will continue to do that. And I've had good both educational conversations with them and personal conversations too. So I am very excited about that. That's something we should all strive for. Now, since I don't want this to be here's how we label kids, I'm going to do it kind of jokingly and tell you how I handle these situations. I'm going to call the first group of kid the easy peasies, and here's why. Especially, it seems like in math class. I don't know if I'm being biased because that's my favorite subject, but it seems like in that class it happens more often than not that teachers will leave work or they'll leave something to do on the computer, and I'll have students say, "Man, this is easy." And then I'll see other students in in other parts of the room really struggling with it. So I'm glad that that student thinks it's easy. I don't know if they're bragging to the students around them that they think it's easy, but normally here's how I handle it. I'll walk up to them and I'll talk to them quietly and I'll say, I am thankful that this comes to you easily. Let me tell you why I would prefer you not to say that out loud. And then I'll tell them a lot of times I think it intimidates the other students. They'll have even more anxiety because they're not getting their problems done, their work done as quickly as the student that it comes easy for or to, whichever preposition I'm supposed to use there. So I think that is a productive way to have that conversation. If you don't say anything to them, they're always going to make comments about it being easy. And yes, I'm thankful that it's easy to them and they're getting A's in that class, and I'm thankful for that. I even encourage these easy peasy students to, hey, since it comes so easy for you, would you mind when you get finished maybe to just provide assistance to other students? And that kind of gives them a sense of pride. And hopefully that goes over better than just declaring that it's easy. So those are my easy peasy students. That's my first group. Then we have what I jokingly refer to as the attention getters. Now, to a degree, the group that I just described are attention getters too. They want to declare how easy something is. But these are the ones that you just seem like they always are trying to get attention. And I'll be honest with you, I was a little like this when I was in high school, but it's the ones that, when they just walk across the room to get a tissue, they make a big ordeal out of it. They're hopping up and down. They need those other students to laugh at them and to have fun. And I'm a fun lover, so I laugh at them too sometimes, but sometimes it will get to the point that you're saying, all right, now, as long as you get your work done, I used to be like that. As long as you get your work done, I'm not going to fuss at you too much. But now I'm more the type that I'll walk over to them and tell them, listen, I know that you're an A student. I know that you like attention. I did too when I was in school. But here's what I wish my teachers had told me because I didn't want to affect the performance of the other students. I wish they had said, Mr. Collins or Greg, I need you to act in such a way that it's not distracting to other students. I'll say you're smart enough that you can get the work done and act like this as well, but some of these students can't get their work done if you're distracting them. So would you mind trying your best not to distract any more than possible? And they're usually very good about that. I actually had a situation last school year where the distraction was really bad. And yes, it was an A student. So bad that one time when we had a few extra minutes, I handed around a survey in each class and said, what do you think we need to do to make this class better and make it easier for you to learn at the same time? And a lot of them put down the actions of this student was distracting them. And it bothered this student a little bit when I first told them, but then that student later thanked me for telling them that, and they greatly, absolutely greatly improved how they behaved in class. So that's my second category. So the easy peasies, you just tell them try not to declare that because it might be intimidating to students. The attention getters, you just basically say, that might be distracting as well. Could you try to hold it down some? I'm glad that you're smart enough to do both. And I'm not even saying that I didn't do that when I was in school, but it is a bit distracting to the other students. So that's the first two categories. Now, the final category I'm going to mention are the help me with this students. the ones that constantly say, help me with this. And of course, when somebody does that, we're going to try and help them. That's why I always enjoy being in math classes best, because now I admit when I was in social studies classes for several days, I learned a lot. I even joked with my wife once this week that there was a Jeopardy question that had I not studied or taught social studies for several weeks, I wouldn't have known that, but I actually knew the answer to the question because of that. So I try to retain what I'm learning, but math comes easier for me. And I run into students all the time that say, help me with this. In fact, the last 2 days this week, there was a lot of these students that needed help. We were basically putting chart coordinates on an X and Y graph, and we put enough of them on there that it actually created a picture when we were done. So that was our project. And some of them, I could tell just by looking at their chart that, when they called me over to help saying this doesn't look right, I could tell that they just put something on a positive number rather than a negative number. So I was able to help them with that. But the students I'm talking about are the ones that will say, help me with this, that haven't really given it a good shot yet. And you learn these students as you go along, and you don't want to treat them any differently other than the fact what I try to do is not just tell them the answer, of course, but when they're looking at a question and they ask me to help me with this, I'll say, well, how far have you gotten with it? Which ones have you narrowed it? Have you canceled out that is not the answer? Maybe on a multiple choice worksheet of that type. What answers can you rule out? And sometimes I can tell that they really haven't looked hard enough at it, and they just want some artificial assistance to help them get the question right. And sometimes they'll tell me they want a good grade in the class, so they want the teacher to help them, the substitute teacher to help them. So what I'll try to do, I'll formulate in my head what the answer is, and then I'll talk them through it. I'll say, okay, let's reread the question together. And having read that, look at the answers and tell me what you can cross out. This is not the answer. And usually they'll have one or two of those. So now we're down to maybe two answers. And I'll say to them, the way this question is worded, you can kind of tell which of the answers that are left is the correct answer. And more times than not, they'll realize that and answer the question. So that's what I like to do with the Help Me With This students. I like to lead them in the direction so that they don't get lazy with their answers and don't just ask the teacher for help without really spending a whole lot of time with it. So there you have it. Those are my 3 tongue-in-cheek labels of students, the easy peasies, the attention getters, and the Help Me With This guys, all of whom are not really labeling students. It's just my way of saying that we have different categories of students that we have to handle in different ways. But the least achieving student in our class should get just as much attention as the most achieving. I know you guys try to do that. Let's continue our practice of trying to do that, and that way we'll have all the students in our class come up to us and say, Mr. Substitute, I'm glad you're here today. Hope you've enjoyed today's episode 35 of Substitute Teachers Lounge. Music provided by Ben Sound.